For a little while, guys, I was actually considering not doing a video on this. This particular incident that happened at the BAFTAs, and all the backlash that's happened when someone with Tourette's yelled out the N word during the BAFTAs last week, and for two reasons. Firstly, is down to my circumstances. I don't suffer from Tourette's, and I also, obviously, I'm not black. But the other reason was that initially the reaction that I got was the reaction I kind of wanted to see. Was it started out good, and then after the weekend, it turned out the reaction wasn't quite so good. For those of you that don't know, let's just quickly reminder of what happened. Michael B. Jordan and Delroy Lindo were both presenting an award at the BAFTAs, and twice a member of the audience with Tourette's yelled out the N-word. Now, this wasn't just any random person that was there at the BAFTAs. It was actually John Davidson. Is it John Davidson? Jim Davidson? I think it's John. John Davidson, who is actually not just an advocate for Tourette's, but he had basically been a director for a film called I Swear, that was about dealing with Tourette's, about raising the awareness, and given the fact that it was in, part of the BAFTAs conversation, it obviously is a bloody good film. So we had this situation that had gone on. Someone with Tourette's yelling out the N-word, whilst Michael B. Jordan and Delroy Lindo were presenting. And there's kind of like a quote. When I started researching this, there was one quote that kept coming into my mind, which was actually from the Hunger Games, Catching Fire, where Katniss Everdeen, in the Hunger Games, is about to kill another tribute in anger because her partner, her close friend Peter Malark, was unconscious, was struggling, and was about to kill another tribute, Finnick Odair, and Finnick Odair shouted out, "Remember who the real enemy is." Reminding Katniss that the problem wasn't the tribute in front of her, it was the people that had set up the games in the first place. And this is kind of a similar sort of feel that we're getting here, because, like I said, the initial response was as I wanted. People were remembering who the real enemy was. We had a situation where the focus was pointing fingers at the BBC, the ones that broadcast the BAFTAs, who left the N-word in there. Well, that meant, if it hadn't been broadcast, it could have been dealt with in the night, in the auditorium, as was dealt with by Alan Cumming, the host of the BAFTAs, where he basically dealt with it. Probably didn't know that it was, the N-word was being broadcast, and basically just spoke about the tics and the shouts that were coming from someone with Tourette's. And that should have been that. It could have then been dealt with between Davidson and Michael B. Jordan, Delroy Lindo, having a conversation between themselves, get that misunderstanding sorted, get it cleared up. No one, people have been initially hurt, and there's, awkwardness and things like that. But the understanding means that everyone realizes they're actually on the same side, that this isn't someone being racist. This isn't some, you know where I'm going with this, right? But because of the broadcast, it ended up being the thing on everybody's lips, such as mine, um, over the weekend. And what happened? Well, people ruined it. Because, like I say, the focus was on the BBC, the real enemy. And then what happened over the weekend? This happened. 2 incidents where it was made fun of. And look, I have quite a dark humour of my own. But even I was looking into this going, this is not the feeling you want to get it out to be. Now, this sketch I don't think was aired for timing reasons. And basically, we had the situation where they were pretending that people like Bill Cosby, like Mel Gibson, J.K. Rowling, Kanye West, Armie Hammer, Louis C.K., all claiming that they had Tourette's, and that was the reason why they came out with the comments that they did. It was horrible. It was despicable, and I'll talk about the reasons later, but then it was compounded even further, because later on we had the NAACP Image Awards, where a black comedian basically said, if there are any white men out here in the audience with Tourette's, I advise you to tell them they better read the room tonight. Let me explain why this is awkward and wrong. To make claims to start off with when it came to Saturday Night Live that Tourette's is some sort of excuse to come out with incorrect and offensive and hurtful comments is so bad, such a bad take. And the same in terms of saying that someone with Tourette's, they can help what they think, giving this impression that, the problem is white men with Tourette's, as if Tourette's for a white man means that they're just going to shout out the N-word because, of course, they are. They're a white guy. They've got Tourette's. They're going to blurt out racist comments. It's such a bad take. And let me explain further in the best way. Like I say, I don't have Tourette's, but I have a very close friend who does. And we were in an auditorium. This is about 7 years ago now. Let's transition to the main one because I don't want any distraction. But yeah, 7 years ago, we were in an auditorium. Now, this person with Tourette's doesn't have verbal Tourette's. It's not they're coming out with words, swear words or anything like that. Their particular tics were noises, barking, little things like that, right? And this auditorium was basically it was almost silent, right? There was one guy that was speaking on the platform, on the stage, but otherwise it was quiet, apart from the barking that was going on. Now, here's the thing: did it affect me? I'm going to say yes. Right? I've got sensory difficulties when it comes to my hearing. Any sort of unexpected noises, it is distracting, it's sometimes painful. Of course, it affects me. And so, yeah, I was distracted for about an hour. And then I was distracted for a different reason, because the person with Tourette's then was realising that they were having tics and people were hearing them. Probably saw a reaction from someone, right? Not even like a visible reaction, like a look of disgust, just maybe someone flinching. And the person with Tourette's completely broke down. She had to leave the auditorium, not because of she'd upset anybody, or she'd been kicked out, or she'd been removed, for embarrassment, for being upset that she caused a scene. Now tell me, does that sound like the type of person that would use Tourette's as an excuse to come up with offensive remarks? Does that sound like the type of person that would um, show any sort of disdain or horrific viewpoints on people of another nationality, race, gender, etc., etc., etc.? Absolutely not. How do we know this? Because it was sorted out between the three of them. John Davidson, I keep forgetting. Is it John Davidson? I can't remember. But anyways, Davidson reached out to Michael B. Jordan, reached out to Delroy Lindo, sorted it out between the three of them. Everyone in that BAFTA's room knew who the real bad guys were. They also knew who the victims were. And of course, it was Michael B. Jordan. Of course, it was Delroy Lindo. To hear something so offensive, something that has been used in to mean derogatory things, to cut people down, it obviously hurt them. In fact, I remember looking at Delroy Lindo. When the word came out, he stuck his tongue out to the left-hand side. I do that sometimes when it's like biting rage, not wanting to react. Delroy Lindo absolutely was like had the feelings, had the hit of what it must have been like, right? So much anger, and held it together. Same with Michael B. Jordan. So much anger, held it together. But do you know what? Davidson's a victim too. Because now he's become the wisecrack, the butt of a joke, a way to talk about Tourette's as if it's an excuse for something. That the most horrific comments can be explained away by everybody if they just say they've got Tourette's. It's disgusting. Absolutely disgusting, because he is a victim as much as anything else, because as many people have actually now pointed out, two people have heard a racial slur which is well, more than two people, but you know what I mean, the racial slur directed at them which is designed to cut people down. So in terms of the racism, that's still that subject is still hurting and cutting deep. But you know what? Tourette's being misunderstood is still there and still cutting deep, and perhaps cutting deeper than ever right now. I mean, there's a comment that's Sweet Anita has done a video on it, much better than I could ever do, by the way, talking about the N-word tick in more detail. And if you get a chance, please watch it, because it is fascinating. Really, really interesting how she had the N-word tick, and how difficult it was to get that removed. It's what it is. I do want to, though, finish with a bit more of a positive note, because, or at least talk about the whole situation, because Alan Cumming has been a star throughout all of it. We'll talk about that later, because I just wanted to talk about one more thing as well. So, we mentioned about Davidson, about the BBC were the ones in the wrong, but I wanted to focus on this about Lindo as well. Lindo told Vanity Fair that he and Jordan did what we had to do as they carried on presenting the category, but also said he wished someone from BAFTA spoke to us afterward. That's crazy. I know we know the Hollywood culture's toxic. I had no idea it was this toxic. Someone's just had racial slurs thrown at them and no one's checked in with them afterwards? In fact, based on that, it sounds like Davidson was perhaps the first person that spoke to them to talk about it. Like, just imagine that, guys, right? I want you to imagine you have been organising the BAFTAs. You're there, you're on the sides, I don't know, right? You're one of the director, one of the guys that's doing the lighting. You hear what's gone on. Don't you want to check in on all three of them? Make sure they're okay? Is that not a thing? Is it a case you just have to deal with it? Goodness me. Anyway, Alan Cumming. I wanted to talk about this because I'm actually just going to read word for word what Alan Cumming said, because I think Alan Cumming has absolutely nailed that thing that I was talking about earlier when it comes to the Hunger Games. Remember who the real enemy is. And the way that he spoke about it, the way that he's commented, has been amazing. It's on Instagram. I'm going to read it out here because I don't like going on Instagram. So, I'm so sorry for all the pain black people have felt hearing the word echoed around the world. I'm so sorry the Tourette's community has been reminded of the lack of understanding and tolerance that abounds regarding their condition. We were all let down by decisions made to both broadcast slurs and censor free speech. And the censoring free speech is about the fact that other parts of the ticks were blurred out to make it almost sound like it was just the one thing that he said. There was just shouts that he came out that weren't broadcast by the BBC. I forgot to mention that, but yeah, that's the censoring free speech part of it. Anyway, and then this, I do love this. The only possible good that could come out of this is a reminder that words matter. That rushing to judgment about things that we are not fully cognizant is folly. That all trauma should be recognised and honoured. I want to break that down. Let's start off the bit that words matter. Right. That rubbish that you used to hear when growing up, sticks and stones may break my bones, words will never hurt me. Absolute rubbish. Some words cut like nothing else. And for the black community, the N-word is going to cut more than anything else. That rushing to judgment about things that we are not fully cognizant is folly. Let's point that out. That the people that have basically gone, oh, that guy must be a racist, all that sort of thing, they're made to feel absolute idiots when they realise that it was a tick. He wasn't fully he wasn't in control of what had happened, and the problem was the broadcaster, not the people in the room. And that all trauma should be recognised and honoured. And absolutely, the lack of recognition that has come from media, basically, big media, from Hollywood, from other award shows, from the BBC, from Saturday Night Live, just not recognising people's trauma, not recognising what should have happened. Ridiculous. Crazy. And out of all of this, the people in that room at the BAFTAs were amazing. Let's be honest, Michael B. Jordan and Delroy Lindo were well within their rights to react to what was said. Well within their rights. They bit their tongue. They dealt with it professionally. And I'd like to think that when Davidson reached out to them to speak about it and discuss it, that they would have been up for it. Davidson has wrote, I think only today, about the whole situation, has decided to bite his tongue and, be calm about the whole situation, as in not to react too emotionally, because I'll tell you something, if I was in Davidson's shoes right now, I wouldn't want to speak to anyone for weeks. And he has recognised that words matter. He has recognised that just because it's a tick doesn't mean it didn't hurt. So, guess what? He's done what he could to resolve the situation. And Alan Cumming, throughout the whole of it, has shown kindness, has shown support, has done his best to soothe hurt that's been caused by an entire community in the black community, whilst also showing kindness and thoughtfulness and inclusivity to ensure that people with disabilities still feel welcome. I mean, like I said, I have Tourette's. I do have epilepsy, right? If I'd found out that after having an epileptic seizure, my flailing arm as I was falling punched somebody in the face, I'd want them to be attended to, and I'd want me to be attended to in equal measure. Them to be soothed, me to be looked after medically. And in a similar sort of way, what Alan Cumming has done has basically addressed the initial effects of the slur and then done his best to calm the whole situation. You know, like we've been having memes about people winning the Peace Prize. No joke about it, this guy has potentially stopped a war between the disabled community and the black community by his words. And I'm fiery as someone who's disabled. There's others in the disability community that's quite fiery too. There's people in the black community that will be fiery as well, passionate about defending the communities. Could have been a little bit of a civil war going on. And Alan Cumming has basically ensured that all of our hurt is addressed, that all of our hurt is soothed and healed as much as possible, so that we realise that the problem isn't the black community. The problem isn't those with Tourette's. The problem is those that want to highlight the hurt, to broadcast the hurt, and to make fun of the hurt. Guys, this is a really sensitive topic, and I appreciate that not everyone is going to be on the same wavelength and has different thoughts on the same thing. But yeah, I'm going to finish off with just that quote. But feel free to like, comment, share, whatever you guys want to do. And until next time, just remember who the real enemy is. Thank you.